Did ambassadors make good money? Did generals, did scientists, did CEOs? He got me reading business magazines.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news is here.
From interesting tech startups to industry-leading companies, politics, sports, culture, curry, cricket. Oh, there's so much to talk about. Like me, if you too thrive on interesting conversations, this is a show you cannot miss. Watch this space to know more about all matters and all people that make Britain what it is today. Out of Britain, with me, Radhika Iyer.
You are watching The World 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Bava. Let's begin with the top stories you need to know. The US stock market rout deepened on Monday, reflecting investor nerves after US President Trump refused to rule out the possibility of a recession this year. Wall Street's worst day of 2025 came as China's tariffs on American goods took effect and Ontario added a 25% surcharge on its energy exports to 3 US states. Prime Minister Modi's two-day state visit to Mauritius begins today. Our countries are looking to sign pacts on maritime security, combating financial crimes, as well as training of civil servants. Senior US and Ukrainian officials have arrived in Saudi Arabia for high-stakes meetings today, aimed at repairing a severely damaged relationship that has left him battle-keep without Washington support. Billionaire and Department of Government Efficiency chief Elon Musk has claimed that his social media platform X was hit by a massive cyber attack originating from the Ukraine area. US Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard has announced that she has embarked on a multi-nation trip to the Indo-Pacific region, during which she will visit India, Japan, and Thailand. India and Armenia signed 2 major MOUs during the first visit of Armenia's foreign minister to India. An MOU was signed between India's Central Drug Standard Control Organization and Armenia's Center of Drug and Medical Tech Expertise, another one on cooperation as well. Well, our top story, US stock markets cratered on Monday with investors fearful that the economy could be headed into a recession. I'll tell you why this is a big deal. This could put new pressures on consumer confidence and the Trump administration, all just days ahead of a possible government shutdown in the United States. Wall Street's worst day of 2025 came as China's tariffs on American goods took effect, and Ontario added a 25% surcharge on its energy exports to 3 US states, as Canada had initially indicated as well. But is the American public fully aware of the potential risks of a recession? Or is there a disconnect between political rhetoric and economic reality in the US? Well, my colleague Mitch McCann joins us from New York to break down the latest developments. Listen in.
Well, the three-week stock sell-off intensified on Monday. At the closing bell here on Wall Street, the Dow Jones was down 890 points. The Nasdaq fell 4% on Monday, and the S&P 500 was down 2.69%, almost 2.7%, which is its lowest level since December of 2024. The question is, why do the stocks continue to fall, as we've seen in recent weeks, and what's ahead? Well, the first part of that answer is the talk of tariffs and the on-again, off approach to tariffs is really causing confusion and spooking some investors. For example, last week, Donald Trump implemented a 25% tariff on both Canada and Mexico. By the end of the week, many of the industries that would have been affected by that no longer were, because the Trump administration changed its policy there. Then there's talk of a recession that we've seen on Monday as well. That is because over the weekend, Donald Trump had done an interview that aired on Sunday night on Fox News Business, where he was asked about the prospect of a recession in the coming months. And this is what he had to say. He said, I hate to predict things like that. There is a period of transition because what we're doing is very big. So instead of saying, no, there's not going to be a recession, he said we are in a position of transition at the moment, which will create more economic uncertainty ahead. So there's the tariffs, there's the talk of recession, there's also the fact that unemployment has ticked up from 4 to 4.1% last week, and inflation is still not close to that 2% target that the Federal Reserve would like to see. So still some uncertainty and possibly more to come. We're hearing reports that there could be more tariffs on steel and aluminum imports to the United States as early as the middle of this week. And then we're also looking towards those reciprocal tariffs that are going to be announced in early April. Mitch McCann, NDTV, New York.
Also, my colleague Maha Siddiqui has been keeping a close track of the market sentiment. She joins us live at the moment. Maha, the sell-off came as Ontario put in place retaliatory surcharges on energy it exports to Michigan, Minnesota and New York?
That's correct. And this is, in fact, to be able to get back on the U.S., which has sometimes announced and then taken back the tariffs that we have seen, the 25% tariffs specifically, which were announced by Donald Trump and then paused for a bit. But many of the products and goods that are being exported from Canada to U.S. already under the 25% tariff, because they're out of the ambit of the agreement between Canada, U.S. and Mexico called CUSMA on the Canadian side. Now, this 25% surcharge that specifically the province of Ontario has now imposed will mean that there will be gains of about $400,000 every day. And what the Ontario province says is that it will use this amount that it will get because of the 25% surcharge on the electricity that it's exporting to Minnesota, New York and Michigan. It is going to use for the welfare of the workers and the industry here because of the kind of losses that they are likely to suffer due to the tariffs that President Trump is announcing. Moreover, this is also bracing up for the steel and aluminum tariff, that is to come into effect this week. And this is the reason that this retaliatory tariff is being seen from Ontario.
As always, Maha, thank you so much for joining us with the lowdown. And also for an expert's view, let's go across to Jeffrey Dennis, who joins us live from North Carolina at the moment. Thank you so much, Mr. Dennis, for making time for us on NDTV. How likely is the US actually heading towards a recession, considering the unexpected market behavior? And how should investors actually brace for the coming months?
Well, I think the chances of recession have definitely increased and increased very significantly. I'm not sure we can actually say will be a recession at this point. I think it's probably a 40 to 50% chance, but it's obviously gone up significantly, as indicated by things like consumer confidence, the ISM Services Index, the softness of retail sales in January. The employment report was okay, it wasn't great. But I think the best indicator that things are deteriorating is the the Atlanta Fed's so-called nowcast estimate, which at the moment is calling for something like a minus 2.5% annualized GDP data point for Q1. Now, of course, that could change as more data comes in. But I think the main reason why the markets are going down still here is because of the risk of recession now, against a background where there's massive uncertainty, as is very clear, on who's going to get tariffs put on them, how much, when, will they be taken off? Just huge uncertainty, which
Absolutely.
companies don't like above all. Meanwhile, I'm not sure the Fed has got a lot of room to cut interest rates at this point because of inflation. So I think it's all combining here to give us a very nasty market. And I don't think we've necessarily hit bottom quite yet.
In fact, Mr. Dennis, Shelby McFadden mentioned that the current administration's policies in the US could lead to, quote, pain. Do you agree with this assessment? And how do these policies actually compare to those of previous administrations in terms of their potential to trigger a recession?
Well, I mean, nobody wants a recession, and I don't suppose President Trump wants a recession, but he has freely admitted, as you mentioned in his television interview, the economy may have some periods of turbulence. And so I think that the policies that we've seen taken by the new administration, especially to do with tariffs, above all, as I say, the uncertainty over tariffs, just make the recession a much more realistic possibility. Now, very few administrations would come into office and within 6 weeks would do things that really raise the risk of recession in an economy, unless you are dealing with a huge inflation problem, which you're not in the US. So clearly, there's a loss of confidence in the Trump administration, in my view, on the part of the markets anyway. And the nub of the issue, sorry to repeat myself, is the uncertainty over the tariff situation worldwide. We are apparently, it looks like, heading for something like a global trade war. And the US economy doesn't like that. It won't benefit from that. And frankly, in the short term, President Trump doesn't seem to care.
Well, in fact, the drop in major tech stocks like Tesla and Apple has investors worried, especially since these companies are considered a key driving force behind the US economy. In fact, many are arguing, Mr. Dennis, that this is a stark early sign of a broader economic slowdown, but we still have some who say it's just a temporary market correction. Let's see how this pans out. Thank you so much for joining us with your comments on NDTV. Well, let's switch tracks now. Prime Minister Modi has embarked on a 2-day state visit to Mauritius, where he's also going to be the chief guest at the National Day celebrations. Now, Mauritius's Deputy Foreign Minister has said that they are pleased and extremely honored to have Prime Minister Modi's presence in Mauritius, and our two countries will look to further consolidate the already excellent partnership that exists between us. And calling it a special occasion, Mauritius's Deputy Foreign Minister has stated that all 34 ministers will welcome Prime Minister Modi with all the protocol and pomp. Well, he has an action-packed agenda while he's on this state visit. Our Prime Minister is, in fact, expected to further strengthen bilateral talks and sign several pacts. This could be in areas of tackling cross-border financial crimes, also trade, capacity building. But for the latest lowdown, let's go across to Port Louis, Mauritius, where my colleague Mohammed Ghazali has been tracking all the finer details. Ghazali, we're hearing several pacts in areas of capacity building, trade, also tackling cross-border financial crimes are likely to be signed during this tour. Take us through the plan of action.
See, one of the major focus of this entire trip would be the maritime security, because the geostrategic location of Mauritius also offers us a great assistance in Indian Ocean region, because we know that how China has been influencing our neighborhood, be it Mauritius. We saw flip-flop relations with Mauritius when Mr. Moizu became the president. He ran a campaign, India out and China in. But after becoming the president, he met Prime Minister Modi during the swearing-in ceremony, but that relation is still building up. Same goes with Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka got new president, Mr. Dissanayake. After winning the election and after getting into office, he visited China. China has been funding many projects in Sri Lanka, and that is why Mauritius becomes a real partner here. And this is a region where back in 2015, during his first trip as Prime Minister, Mr. Modi had envisioned the Sagar policy, the security and growth for all India in the Indian Ocean region. And that is why there are several key MOUs which are going to be signed as far as maritime security is concerned. There is a particular MOU which the Mauritian Navy will sign with the Indian government of the Maritime Department, where they will talk about gathering intelligence data in the naval ship here in the sea waters. That makes it very relevant for the security, for the maritime security. And why maritime security is also very significant here, because we know that Mauritius also happens to be the gateway to Africa. for Indian trade. And that is why we come to the next part of the next layer of this relation, the trade ties. As far as the trade ties are concerned, the bilateral trade has only swelled in years between India and Mauritius. Then we come to the capacity building. India will be assisting some officials from here for training. That India has been doing it in the neighborhood, and that's one of the many nations have paid gratitude to this financial assistance for funding the public projects in Mauritius or training the civil servants here, and that forms another layer of relations between India and Mauritius.
Ghazali, as always, thanks so much for joining us with the lowdown. We will, of course, revert to you for regular updates. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is leading a delegation to Saudi Arabia for talks with Ukrainian officials on ways to end the 3-year war between Russia and Ukraine. But Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who did arrive in Saudi Arabia on Monday for talks with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, has said that he will not attend today's talks with U.S. officials. Zelensky has said that Ukraine's position in today's talks with U.S. officials will be fully constructive and that he hopes for practical outcomes from the negotiations on ending the Russian war in his country. Meanwhile, U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff has claimed that Zelensky has now apologized to President Trump. But let's just listen in to what the U.S. Special Envoy to Middle East had to say.
Zelensky sent a letter to the president. He apologized for that whole incident that happened in the Oval Office. I think that was an important step. And there's been a lot of discussion between our teams and the Ukrainians and the Europeans who are relevant to this discussion as well. And I would like to describe it as progress. And so I would hope that there's a deal. What's on the table, what's important to discuss are obviously security protocols for the Ukrainians. They care about that. The territorial issues, the utility plant. But these are not complicated things. They just need to be put on the table, and everybody needs to be transparent about what their expectations are. Then we can begin to have a discussion around how we compromise.
And for a quick comment on the latest developments, we have with us Dr. Richard Benkin, live from Chicago. As always, Dr. Benkin, thank you so much for your time. Some analysts, quite interestingly, are saying that if Zelensky plays it right, he could put the ball back in Russia's court, really testing the Russians, who have so far been averse to any partial ceasefire. What's your take, Dr. Benkin?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on, and congratulations for another victory for your Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, who I've been a big fan of since he was CM in Gujarat. The situation in Ukraine is one that I think people need to understand one thing. Conflicts end in one of two ways. Either one side imposes its will on the other through a military victory, or the two sides negotiate an end to the war. At this point, there's no way Ukraine's going to impose a military victory on Russia. And I think President Trump has been clear about that. And,
right.
and Ukraine's best option is this sort of a negotiation. I think what happened during the dust-up at the White House is that President Trump is trying to broker a peace agreement between these two sides. And prior to his taking office, the United States took a very unequivocal position supporting Ukraine. President Trump knows, as someone who has brokered many deals, he knows you can't be an honest broker if you are clearly on one side, one person's side.
He has also been accused of being a bully, sir.
Pardon?
He has also been accused of being a bully in this deal. Trump.
Well, I'm not sure what people mean by that. I mean, the fact is, in addition to doing that with Mr. Zelensky, he also threatened Mr. Putin with serious sanctions when he seemed to take advantage of the daylight that has been developing between the United States and Ukraine. I think if we look at this in that broader perspective, that the accusation of being a bully kind of takes on a whole different meaning. If anything, he's trying to bring both sides to the table,
right,
clearly stating that both sides are going to have to make some compromises, which means no one's going to be happy, but hopefully the killing and the dying comes to an end.
Right. Well, let's see how these talks progress in Saudi Arabia, sir. We will, of course, revert to you for regular updates. News and updates continue in a moment, right after this very short break. Do stay tuned.
AI scientist, and some would even call him a rock star in the AI space.
We definitely need AI for is to unlock some of the mysteries of nature.
As someone who is an AI scientist, what is your goal?
Our civilization is facing a number of sort of challenges, and I think this is where AI comes into the picture.
Will this replace most jobs?
The new generation of AI models is that they have cognitive ability.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news is here.
From interesting tech startups to industry-leading companies, politics, sports, culture, curry, cricket. Oh, there's so much to talk about. Like me, if you too thrive on interesting conversations, this is a show you cannot miss. Watch this space to know more about all matters and all people that make Britain what it is today. Out of Britain, with me, Radhika Iyer.
Path-breaking innovation and a lot that technology can achieve. But I feel this is one question that I must ask simply because it impacts so many people's lives, which is the role AI is playing in our lives in terms of some sort of a disinformation, that's also happening, and a large part of company and government's resources goes in addressing some of this. As I said, it may look much lower in the tech ladder in terms of what you're doing, but it impacts people's lives. So how can Google sort of address the flip side to AI, which is some of the disinformation that we see? I mean, it may be an inevitable outcome of what you are doing, but is there a way of reducing its potential pitfalls?
So yeah, absolutely. In fact, we think that this is a very important sort of topic that deserves a lot of thought and care. With generative AI especially, it has the ability to sort of generate text, images, audio and video. That ability is very powerful and very useful in many contexts, but it also comes with the risks, right? If the same power is used for malicious purposes. So to make sure that users, when they are consuming this information, they understand whether this content is naturally generated or
Welcome back. Greenland holds parliamentary elections today under unusually high global scrutiny due to US President Donald Trump's threats to annex the territory. Most local politicians have condemned Trump's proposal, with Greenland's Prime Minister actually accusing Trump of not treating island residents with respect. Although I must mention, others have argued the US President's interest could spur investment and development as well.
Greenlanders are gearing up to brave the freezing ice and snow for an election that could dramatically alter the Arctic island's future. In the backdrop of growing international attention, particularly from US President Donald Trump's repeated attempts to acquire the island, voters will head to the polls to elect 31 members of its legislature. But this time around, the stakes are higher than ever. Greenland's position on the world stage is up for debate. Will it stay part of Denmark, seek full independence, or draw closer to global powers like the US and Europe. Greenland's strategic location makes it a highly coveted prize for global powers. With vast reserves of rare earth minerals, billions of barrels of oil, and a potential gateway for new shipping routes, it's a treasure chest waiting to be unlocked. Many are worried and offended by Trump's threats to seize control of their mineral-rich homeland, even by force, because he says the U.S. needs it for national security.
Greenland is a very independent with the help of Denmark, and honestly, we have our own living resources, and if we were to become a part of the USA, a lot of our living resources would like shorten, and we wouldn't get as much money than we're getting from our fishing. Like, it would increase a lot, and then we might get a lot of inflation doing so. And then he might add a lot of taxes here, which would also increase the homelessness here. So it's really, we feel like it's a bad idea, and we just more want to be like our little island, just more independent than anything else.
Meanwhile, some voters believe U.S. control could be beneficial.
Donald Trump, she got the military, she got the food, she got everything. I think she's thinking about it. Greenland, we need help. No more tennis, no more everything. We need help.
But many also see the global spotlight as an opportunity to promote their long-standing push for independence from Denmark, which is shaped up to be a key issue in the legislative election. As Greenland heads to the polls, the future of their island hangs in the balance, with crucial decisions ahead on its sovereignty and global alliances. The outcome could reshape not only Greenland's political landscape, but its place in the world. Samia Afsar, NDTV World.
Thank you for investing your time in watching this edition of The World 24/7. As always, we'll keep tracking the latest developments for you. Do stay tuned.
AI scientists, and some would even call him a rock star in the AI space.
We definitely need AI for is to unlock some of the mysteries of nature.
As someone who is an AI scientist, what is your goal?
Our civilization is facing a number of sort of challenges, and I think this is where AI comes into the picture.
Will this replace most jobs?
The new generation of AI models is that they have cognitive ability.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news is here.
From interesting tech startups to industry-leading companies, politics, sports, culture, curry, cricket. Oh, there's so much to talk about. Like me, if you too thrive on interesting conversations, this is a show you cannot miss. Watch this space to know more about all matters and all people that make Britain what it is today. Out of Britain, with me, Radhika Iyer.
Why is that lingering fear there about, will this replace most jobs? I mean, and how does one address that lingering doubt about a tech breakthrough?
Yeah, so I think the first thing to think about the new generation of AI models is that they have cognitive abilities. They are able to solve cognitive tasks. Now, if you think about the history of technology, when calculators came out, right? There were people who used to do those very cumbersome mathematical sort of calculations, which now did not need to do them by hand, but could use calculators. So, in the same way, there will be certain types of tasks and certain types of activities that these models will be able to do. And I think the right thing that we will need to do is basically figure out how should we leverage them, and then the productivity gains that we get, how do we then invest those productivity gains towards solving newer problems. So, if there are people, if we have more time now because we are more productive and we have access to these tools, the thing that society needs to ask itself is to how do we take on that extra amount of productivity that we have, and where should we focus it.
Okay,
and the answer that I would like that I would propose is basically there are so many challenges that we are facing. In fact, we should be thinking about using any sort of our brain power that we can get towards those things.
I would probably see this that the era of generalists may be over and the era of experts may probably be dawning upon us. But let's now look at some of those specifics in terms of first and foremost life sciences and medical research, simply because of the impact on humanity may be just so intense and life changing. How do you see that? You've also done a lot of work in that area, whether it is about pandemics or whether it's about cures or prevention. How do you see?
This is NDTV, and you're watching NDTV 24/7.
Hello and good morning. You're watching Breakfast Show. I'm Radhika Ramaswamy joining you from Mumbai studios. Prime Minister Modi's historic visit to Mauritius. In fact, he has landed in Mauritius. Several important deals are expected to be signed at this point. In fact, those are the visuals of Prime Minister Modi being given the ceremonial welcome at the airport. He's on a historic two-day visit to Mauritius. Maritime security is going to be in focus as he has now visiting Mauritius. Let's get you the headlines. Prime Minister Modi in Mauritius on two-day visit. Chief guest at National Day celebrations focus on maritime security and bilateral ties. Budget session day 2, storm over national education policy expected. A DMK accuses centre of blackmail. Union Education Minister says DMK undemocratic and uncivilized. Enforcement Directorate heat on Chhattisgarh ex-Chief Minister Bhupesh Baghel's son. ED summons Chaitanya Baghel. Post raids, Baghel says BJP's attempt to defame me. US stock market loses $4 trillion in value. US market sell-off amid Trump tariffs concerns. True stocks in Saudi Arabia, US, Ukraine set for crucial talks to end war. Champions return home. Indian cricketers arrive at airport. Shreyas Jadeja, Varun Akshar return. First up, Prime Minister Modi is on a two-day visit to Mauritius. He just landed. He is the chief guest for National Day celebrations on March 12. Several pacts in areas of capacity building, trade and tackling cross-border financial crimes are likely to be signed during the tour. Those are the visuals of Prime Minister Modi, who just landed in Mauritius. Let's go straight across to Ghazali. Ghazali, of course, this is an important visit. Give us the significance as far as the visit is concerned. What are the events, agreements that are expected to be the most important?
See, there are multi layers to this entire bilateral visit by the Prime Minister. One, because he also enjoys a personal rapport with the Prime Minister of Mauritius, Mr. Navin Chandran Ramagulam. And in this particular visit, obviously, the focus is on maritime security, but India and Mauritius are also going to sign multiple MOUs when it comes to defense ties, when it comes to trade ties, when it comes to cultural exchange. India has been assisting many public projects here in Mauritius, and that's kind of a goodwill initiative by India.